Yes.
Okay. When you're ready, let me
And
know.
we're good.
Okay, the first question you had for me is, what do you think are the most important issues facing older persons in the United States today? And how do you propose we fix or address those issues? Wow, where to begin? To me, I think the biggest one that I know of right off the bat is Alzheimer's disease is coming at us. I've watched a 2-hour C-SPAN Senate hearing here a while back, about a year ago, and Elizabeth Warren and others were in it, and they had several doctors, several caregivers, and other people there, and it's just a huge problem coming at us. And because you got this baby boomer bulge coming through the pipeline, and there's going to be a lot of Alzheimer's type dementia and all that kind of thing's going to hit. Mm-hmm. I think that's the number one thing that's facing older persons, and we don't have the money, the facilities to handle everybody that's going to be coming through the system when this starts occurring. It can start occurring as early as in your 60s, and then my mother had it, and matter of fact, she died from it 2 years ago, and she contracted it early in late 70s or early 80s, and she lived to 85.
Wow!
And it was expensive. Oh my gosh, is it expensive to because eventually it gets to a point that you got to put them in a facility. You can't keep them at home, like we've talked, because they want to leave all the time and go somewhere. They have no clue where they're going. And my mother, my sister found her, or people called and said, your mother's walking down the street, headed off to the highway.
Wow.
And we had to go pick her up. And eventually that happened a couple of times. And then the third time, my sister said, I can't handle this anymore. And that's what's going to happen to America. You're going to need to eventually put them somewhere where they can be kept safe and can't get out. You have to put them in a lockdown situation. It's extremely expensive. For instance, in Texas, where she was, we had to pay, I think originally it was $7,500 a month.
Wow.
And had she not had savings between her and my dad had passed away at 62 very early on from leukemia. But had she not had those savings, us kids, we would have been hard pressed. There's 5 of us to have to come up with that kind of money every month as extra money out of our pockets to cover it. Fortunately, she was in a lockdown home for only about 2.5 years before she died, and it just about ate up all of her money.
Wow! And that was 5 of you that were.
There's 5 children.
Wow!
And we anyway.
Yeah.
So I see that as a big problem coming through the system, and you're not going to have enough facilities. And where are people going to get the money? This C-SPAN program I watched on Congress go through, the Senate talk about it. Oh, it was horrific to listen to. The caregivers, what they've gone through, which we identified with them easily. The problems you have, and they don't understand what's happening to them. They're really not the same person they were before. It's a horrible disease. We don't have a cure yet, and anyway, that's one of the things I see as the most important issues facing older persons. And what do I propose that we do to fix or address that issue? Oh my goodness, boy, I don't know. Even when I listened to this hearing with the Congress there for 2 hours, they didn't have a lot of answers yet. They're just trying to identify the problem, understand the scope of the problem, and what are the things we need to be thinking about to get this under control. It's a train wreck coming, absolutely, and it's going to be here fairly quick. It's already happening. So how many people are going to be able to afford that kind of money? We actually moved her from Texas at $7,500 a month. Now you get a little bit of help from various other sources, but it still doesn't cover the bulk of it.
Right.
We moved her to Independence, and it turned out there it was like $1,000 less a month. It was still $6,500 a month you got to come up with in order to take care of the situation.
Wow.
So anyway, I don't have an answer to the problem. Is the basic. Let me think if there's anything else major that I can think of, because there are, but I see they're in.
We'll address them in the next few questions. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta think of any. That's the biggest one I can think of. Anyway, let's move on to number 2. What concerns, if any, do you have about health care? What changes in policy might address these issues? Well, I just got on to Medicare after having been on Blue Cross and Blue Shield for most of my working career of 42 years, and I had my own insurance through my employer, and it wasn't a problem. It never, you paid your monthly out of your check. You never really saw it. Mm-hmm. It got pulled out of your check automatically, and you could switch from time to time, but I rarely did. But every now and then I did. Anyhow, I didn't have too much of a problem with that. But now that I'm on Medicare, I just switched last month when I turned 65, so I'm getting acclimated to the new changes. It's now my primary care is through Medicare, and it's nice. One thing good about it is you don't have any co-pays when you go to the doctor. You don't have to do that anymore. I'm not coughing up $35-40 every time I go, and so that's been nice. So I'm learning. And my secondary is now Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and so they pick up the other 20%. Medicare picks up the 80%, and then your secondary or supplemental plan. I have Part A and B. I don't have Part C, but my supplemental, if you will, is Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So that's how I've handled it at the moment. I could go into more detail about that because things are going to change later this year when Angela, my daughter, gets onto her own insurance plan, and then I'll change things a little, but.
Do you have any concerns with the healthcare with the Medicare or
not yet?
Okay.
No. And Blue Cross and Blue Shield, yes, I do have complaints about Blue Cross and Blue Shield because I've noticed in the last few years they've gotten more strict and they've cut back on things they will cover, which is irritating. And I know why they're doing it because it's a for-profit organization, unlike Medicare. And they got to make a profit, and they keep having, they used to pay, for instance, my knee gel injections that I have for my bad knees, since I don't want to do the surgery yet, I could get 2 or more a year. Well, now it's limited to 1 a year, and you got to pick which knee you want to use it on. You don't get 2, even though I got 2 knees. And so they've cut back on that, and it's a new rule as of last year. And I said, well, who came up with that? Well, it's the young 20 and 30-year-olds sitting back in an office making up these rules based on what management tells them they got to do in order to cut a profit. So private insurers, unlike Medicare, are, like in this country, I think I really like the idea of universal health care. We're the only major country left in the world that doesn't have that. And Denmark and Sweden and Great Britain and Canada all have that. And we could do the same. Now, I know it's not a popular thing with the Republicans, but, I'm sorry. I think it's something that's needed because, like, what are you going to do with all these Alzheimer's people? Somebody's going to have to cover that cost. And individuals, families can't do it.
Yeah.
Let me think. What else? What concerns do you have about health care? Like I say, I'm just learning all the things that Medicare. It's mind-boggling when you're coming into that arena after. I just turned 65 last month, and coming into it all last year, I knew this was coming, and you got tons of people hitting you about. What are you going to do for your supplemental? You're going to get Part A and Part B, and you have to start paying for it too. I forget exactly when. It's several months ahead of you actually turning 65, or else you don't get it, or they'll be more expensive for you. And anyway, it's super confusing. Yes, they've got agents out there that call you nonstop and mail out the yin yang about all these supplemental plans through ARP and so forth. And I'm a member of ARP, and I think that's a good thing to be a member of for older people. I think you can join when you're 50. I'm not if it's 50 or 55. But I've been a member for quite a few years, and they give you a lot of good information. And that's who I actually started with was the ARP supplemental people and contacting local agents and talking to them. And I really didn't want to look into it. It's so confusing when you've been used to having your own like Blue Cross and Blue Shield private plan, and then you've got to go and do that. Do you want to stop while we stop him, or just keep going?
It's okay.
All right, what changes in policy might address these issues? I don't know. What are you going to do?
I'm going to pause it real quick.
Okay, the last question we were looking at here, number 2, what concerns, if any, do you have about healthcare? The last thought I have on it is, I mentioned that I think we need universal healthcare in the United States, just like most other modern countries, large countries do in the world, you're going to have to get everybody on to health care and give them a convenient way to access it and pay for it and so forth, because as you get older, and I think one of these questions later on is about what are some of the things that happen as you get older, you need it way more than you did when you were younger, as I'm finding out. I mean, just because things don't work like they used to and your body's wearing out and all the things that come with that, so that we need to not let it get to a crisis point and cut it off before then. You need to get to the doctor and do your regular checkups and all the blood tests and panels and the things you should be doing regularly anyway. A lot of people aren't doing it because they don't have the health insurance and can't pay for it and all that, and it leads to just real severe problems that are going to be way more expensive, and who's going to pay for that? So that's another, for me, plus for universal health care is, for lack of a better way, it'll force everybody to have to start paying more attention to their health. And the sooner you start paying attention to it in your younger years, the better things are. Because for me, we caught, high blood pressure early. I've been on blood pressure meds for 25 plus years now. And there's other things, cholesterol issues that you need to be paying attention to, and there can be other things that pop up in blood panel tests that they need to start. If your thyroid's quit working, and all that stuff can be handled relatively easy with meds today, without too many side effects. If you just pay attention to it early, don't let it become a crisis. And how can we do that? Well, back to, in my opinion, is universal health care needs to be pushed harder for this country than what it is, instead of these for-profit, insurance companies. Anyway, let's go on to question number 3. Do you have any concerns about, about Social Security or Medicare? And if so, what are they? Yes, I do. I mentioned to you already, my brother and I used to talk about this in college 40 some years ago, that even back then we knew that we were going to be in that bulk of baby boomers coming through the pipeline, and it's a huge bulge of it. I'm right in the middle of the baby boomers coming through, and there's just not there's not enough people coming behind us to pay into the systems, both of them, Medicare and Medi-Cal, or Medicare, and so that is there going to be anything there for us when we get there? Well, they're going to have to change the rules, and they're doing it. And you're going to be affected more than I was. For me, what they did that affected myself is, they just a few years back, they raised the age that I have to be for Social Security. They raised the age that I have to reach in order to get full benefits. Without any reductions. And from 65 is what it used to be to 66 now for my age group is what now for your age group. Annie, it's going to be even more. They're going to have to, it may be up to 70 by the time you get there. And you're probably going to get reduced, benefits and not get as, imagine you'll, like myself, I'll probably get back what I paid into it if I live long enough. That's the key. You got to live a while. And, so that's where I see that, and will it it's there for me right now. I had to start taking it last year at 60. Well, yeah, last year at 64 because I didn't want to keep draining my IRAs, and um, I had to drain my IRAs over the last 4 years with Matt, who's my son. For those that don't know, he decided to go to medical school, and that was $250,000 right out of my IRAs that I had to cough up, and because I didn't want him to come out with huge, loans that he's got to pay back. Because a lot of these doctors, it's anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 to go through med school. Some of them never pay it back fully, even after 20 years of being in practice. And I didn't want him coming out that way. We had it, and so we pulled it out, but the taxes killed me.
Wow.
The taxes cost me another $150,000 or almost $200,000 because they just kill you with the taxes for pulling it out of it, because it was a traditional IRA. And then, if I can say one word to the young folks, start your IRAs early as possible. The minute you start working, and put it in Roth IRAs so that you can pull it out without any penalties when you need it. That's for Social Security, and I think we talked about Medicare already a little bit in the previous thing. Anyway, I did get a reduction because I started pulling Social Security last year, but I needed the extra. I didn't want to keep draining my IRAs, so I had to pull in more to, augment my pension every month. But because I still have a daughter, Angela, in college, she takes almost all of my pension every month. And so we're living off Social Security right at the moment because I don't want to keep pulling more out of my IRAs. I've got to leave those alone. Right. We're doing okay. We're all right. But had we not saved Sue and I saved, you can't believe how hard we saved. Yeah. And we built it up. I put a lot of things in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all that kind of thing. And it's done well over the years. But, if there's a big, huge market collapse, I'll get hurt. True, but I have, 50-50 almost now because I'm older in bonds and the other 50% in stocks. And so anyhow, and then some in just CDs and so forth too. Anyway, I'm thinking that's all I can say about so far. I like Medicare from what I've had, the exposure I've had to it just in the last 3 weeks, and having to use it a bunch with my different doctors. I've got them all to transition over. It's not been an issue. They all, fortunately for me, are Medicare accepting doctors, so that's been good. And so I haven't had any big issues with Medicare as of right now. And Social Security, I'm doing okay. I'm not getting the 100% if I'd have waited till 66, another year, but what I am getting is very, very helpful. And I just hope it's there for everybody else. And I do want to say something about those, both those. There are certain people in Congress that like to call it a entitlement program, both of those. And I don't call it that because I had to pay into both of them my whole life, my working career of over 42 years of either being in a college classroom or in an engineering office. It was mandatory. I didn't have a choice. I had to pay into both of those. And I look at it as a prepaid benefit. I paid for that. Sure as heck bet I want to get some of my money back from that. Will I get as much as I put back in? As I put in originally? If I live long enough in Social Security, yeah. And depending on what kind of medical problems I have, I guess I will. But yeah, I don't look at it as an entitlement. I don't like that word, entitlement. It's not an entitlement program, and I know that you are having to pay into it, both of them right now, and you don't get a choice. It's just the way it is. So that would be my only complaint about it, is that you got to live long enough to get your money back out of it. So anyway, other than that, they work fine for me, both of them. Let's go on to number 4, the last one. What is your biggest concern about aging? Oh, geez. Where to begin with that? My biggest concern is trying to stay out from major problems. I talked about when I first came in just a minute ago that I've had issues. I've been trying to stay on top of my cholesterol stuff and my blood pressure and all that kind of thing. And I go every year for my yearly physical and blood panel tests with my primary care physician. I actually have 9 doctors that,
Wow.
that I go to.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
fortunately, all of them, except my dentist, I count him as a doctor.
Sure.
I have insurance. I have dental insurance and I have eye insurance, and my eye doctor is one of the 9 as well. But I have a primary care. I have a urologist, and the other thing. Anyway, I could go on to name the others, but it doesn't matter. The point is, you need a lot of them when you start getting older. I guess the biggest concern I have about my aging is cancer. I've already gone through cancer and survived it. It's not fun. Your dad died of it. It's a huge problem, and there are no good answers. And I'd love to see treatments get better than they are, because what they did for me was, I'm sure, 100 years from now, it'll be looked back on as pretty archaic what they did. They just cut it out. And that's not been fun.
Yeah.
So I would like to see better, and I know they're coming. I know they're in the pipeline, and there's research being done on it. So there's a lot happening in the research world to make things better for us. And when it comes to cancer treatments, which is, I think cancer is probably one of the big things that hits us all, or a lot of us. So anyway, you got to watch all that is what you have to pay attention to. My biggest concern is to, number one, be able to pay for it. And fortunately, I worked long enough to get, Blue Cross and Blue Shield coverage into my retirement. And then then when I hit 65, I was able to transition to Medicare without any problems. So I think that's all I can think of right now. You want any more?
No, that was great.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that was very wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that, Russ.
That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
We covered a lot.